Hello and thank you for joining us. My guest today wrote her autobiography at the age of 21. Coming from someone else, that would probably seem grandiose. But Yeonmi Park has experienced more upheaval, more horror, and more hope than most of us will in our whole lifetimes. She grew up in Hyesan, a North Korean town on the border with China. A river separated the two countries, but it might as well have separated two different planets. When she was small, Chinese children would call out from her across the water. And when the wind was blowing in the right direction, she would catch a tantalizing smell of noodles and dumplings, while she and millions of her compatriots starved. Yeonmi Park defected across that frozen river aged 13, but instead of finding freedom, she had entered the gates of hell. She spares the reader no wrenching detail in her book, In Order to Live, which has just been published in French as Je voulais juste vivre. It's an astonishing story of survival and inner strength. Well, Yeonmi Park is now a human rights activist, and she's involved in efforts to rescue North Korean refugees. Yeonmi, thank you for being here on the interview. Your book starts with a quote, actually, from the American writer Joan Didion, and she was the one who said, we tell our stories in order to live. So did you feel that even after you had survived, that somehow you had to keep living by writing this?
I didn't feel that way for a long time, because after I went through that, I totally told myself to forget what happened. That's the way how I could carry on my life. But I think when I knew that people cared, when I had the opportunity to share my story in Dublin in 2014, and when I saw people care, just they didn't know what's happening in North Korea.
So at first you didn't feel that you could even talk about it to people around you?
I thought if I talk about it, I thought that was the end of my life. I couldn't trust people again, and if I tell people what happened to me, I just didn't know how they'd react to me.
Let's talk about the actual journey that you took. When I was reading about your life in North Korea, it really seemed that somehow it was almost like you were all a breed of humans apart that had been somehow genetically modified or engineered. People who really believed that, for example, your dear leader, Kim-Jung could change the weather simply through his thoughts. And you really believed all this.
So I think that the biggest thing that we don't understand in the Western world is that for us, Kim-Jong-un and Kim Jong-il is a joke. We just laugh over his hairstyle, and we talk about how fat he is, and looks like cartoon almost. But for North Koreans, he's not a joke. He's a god. Kims are gods for us, and I really believe that Kim Jong-il can read my mind, and I was not allowed to have any private thoughts.
And that followed you well into your journey into China. You write that you felt he could still see and know what you were doing.
So I remember when I went to China, I risked my life to go there, and I was being a slave again. But when the people told me, because of your dear leader, you guys are going through this, and I was defending them, defending my leader. Like, what are you talking about? How dare you say like that to my leader?
So at that point, you still didn't feel that you were a victim of the dear leader, even though you had escaped from North Korea?
Yes. I didn't escape from dear leader. I just escaped from the poverty and hunger.
Yeah.
And even in China, for me, he was still my dear leader.
How long was it before that really went away?
I guess, I realized more and more once I escaped to South Korea. But it took a while until I read the book Animal Farm, George Orwell's book. That was really turning point for me to realize, to understand what happened to North Korean people and what really happened to myself.
You really recognized the characters in
the Animal Farm, yes.
The part in your book about your time in China is perhaps the most terrifying section of the whole book. You were forced to marry a Chinese man, and you were, 13 and a half, I think, at the time. And you even saw people haggling about the price of your mother in front of you. Just tell us a little bit about the problem of these forced marriages and the children they're producing, because a lot of your activism is based on that now.
Yeah, so North Korean refugees, we just don't have food inside the country. All we want is just a bowl of rice. I didn't escape for freedom. I didn't even know what it meant to be free. All I wanted was just having something to eat. And once we escaped the frozen river to China with my mother, the first thing that I saw was my mother raped. And the thing they told me that if you want to stay in China, you have to be sold.
You have to be what, sorry?
To have to be sold.
You have to be sold.
Yes. Yeah. And because the Chinese government, if they catch us and they send us back to North Korea, they don't protect us like refugees. And if I send back to North Korea, that means death or imprisonment. And we don't want to go back no matter what. So North Korean women being victimized by these human traffickers. And that's how my mother was sold for $65. And my price was over $200 at the age of 13. And I'm just one of them. And this is happening right now.
How many, is there any estimates about how many North Koreans there are in this situation now in China?
It really depends, but really there's no exact number since they escaped to China and they don't tell people they are from North Korea. But we know that 80% of women are being victimized.
And with the organizations that you now work with, how are you actually getting them out of China? Because you yourself escaped across the Mongolian border, but
Yes.
what are you doing to get them out?
So my case, I didn't have any money and anything, so I just walked across the Gobi Desert between Mongolia and China. But once we have some money, then we can get them out through like other countries like Thailand. And there are some underground organizations. We cannot really talk about how exactly they escape, bring them. But there's a way we can rescue them if we raise near like 2,000.
Is there a risk, though, if you raise awareness of this issue, the Chinese authorities will clamp down on the smugglers, and that then closes the main escape route for North Koreans in the future? Because the land border is obviously with China and not with anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, they're already doing that. So that's why we cannot tell the people like exact route, what kind of road they are taking. And Chinese government doing everything possible to crack down this, the escape route. And they do everything possible and they catch North Korean refugees and send them back to North Korea.
And are there any other escape options open at the moment?
Like swimming to Japan, swimming to cross the Pacific Ocean and to go to America, but really not. Except China, that is the only border, and there's a Russian border, but it's so far away. Yeah. So China is the only way that North Korean people, almost only way. Yeah. There are some people who cross the DMZ or go to China, but it's only a few of them.
The demilitarized zone, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, in terms of how you see North Korea now, can you even imagine freedom coming to other North Koreans in the future?
Yes. I think that's our destiny. As humanity, we have responsibility to free others. If we deserve freedom, if I deserve to speak up, and if I deserve to be heard, then they should be heard. I think that's why we are working on this, and I'm sure I have full of faith in humanity now, so I think we will solve this challenge.
But do you think the rest of the world can really do anything?
Absolutely. There's a way we can. So it's the first thing that we have to know what's really going on. What China does is not acceptable. They cannot send these political refugees, send them back to their country. North Korean refugees are the only refugees that have the country willing to accept them. South Korea is willing to accept them, and they want to give them citizenship. So what we are asking is not asking China to accept us like refugees. Just let us go through. Just let us go through their borders and the country. We are not even asking. We don't want to even stay there. We have a country to go. But China doesn't even want to do that.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, obviously you were growing up in the mid-90s. There was the huge famine.
Yes.
Do you think now North Koreans of, say, your age, who are your age now, they're more aware of what's happening in the outside world than you were in the mid-90s?
Yes, so we call that as a black market generation. So after Soviet Union collapsed, they were stopped helping North Korea, and North Korean regime couldn't provide a ration anymore to their own people. That's why during the 1990s, millions of people died from starvation. And that actually created black market inside North Korea. And this like smuggling informations coming through North Korea from China. And my guess, I remember when I was in North Korea watching Titanic. And that was a turning point in my life because I saw something else. In North Korea, there's no love stories. There's no Romeo and Juliet. But seeing that movie Titanic and seeing somebody can die for love, not the regime. And people can be free that way. They can talk about love like in public. That really gave me some taste of freedom. And this information is getting inside North Korea through the black market.
You think this is sort of increasing compared to what it was before?
Yes, this was not happening when my mother was there. This is the only thing that happened like past decades ago. So if we keep sending information through the border, if we keep providing North Korean people like the image of the outside the world, I'm sure that change in North Korea is inevitable.
Right, so perhaps some cracks appearing there, but obviously a very, very long way to go. We'll have to end it there because we've run out of time. But thank you so much, Yeonmi Park, author of In Order to Live and human rights activist on behalf of North Korean refugees. Thank you for joining me on the interview here on France 24.